It's a party. All right. Uh, Welcome to another open source office hours. Yeah, Nate's not here. He's out of town on his first vacation in several years. So we'll have to hold our questions. Or, I mean, we can ask them and maybe I can answer. Who knows? Hopefully, I've grown up a little bit in the last couple months. And otherwise, we, take notes in the hack pad, so we can always revisit those if we get stuck.
Hi.
But hey, Osman, welcome.
Good to see you.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess this week, in terms of announcements, I guess I've been spending the last couple of weeks, we had this internal, I guess it was like a refactoring party in a way. It was like we had built up a bunch of debt, and we're actually using private NPM to deploy or like to manage a lot of our internal components and modules. And before we set that up, probably a year ago. We were doing things where we checked in node modules to certain repositories so that they wouldn't change underneath us while we're deploying, which had actually bitten us in the before. And so we just went through and like ripped out all the node modules or basically ported over code from the old repos into new ones, and everything is now npm installed, and it's a great new world. So yay for private npm and using that. Also, I had fun yesterday using the code mirror component. So I put it into our backend administrative app, and actually did something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is make my own code pen, or my own tributary with Derby. So Tributary is a project I built, tributary.io, started many years ago, or a few years ago, and it's sort of a D3JS specific code pen. It came out before CodePen. But what I was able to do is use CodeMirror to have HTML, JavaScript, and CSS editor in our app. And it actually builds a component. So the JavaScript that you have by default has this like component class that you can extend, like do component.prototype.init, .create, whatever view functions. And as you type in it, as soon as it's valid, it like re-renders that component. So it's pretty cool. You can like dynamically create a component and modify it. And the thing that's nice about it is that we have like our app-specific data available that we can pass into that component, which may change depending on what you're doing. So it's our like own internal code pen. I hope to at some point open source like the same kind of structure, I guess, or like components are all open source. And the one major thing I had to figure out that I'll be sharing is how to dynamically recreate a component. There are several things to look out for there, especially if you're letting someone type and they have a syntax error, and you're just like, if you were just to eval the code, Derby would then try to like run that component, and then Derby would throw an error. So I had to like in the program put everything in a try catch, make Derby go through the motions of initiating the component, and then make it live. So I'll try to make a demo video of this. I know in the chat people were talking about screencasting stuff so that people could see what they're doing with Derby. I think it's a great idea because most of the cool stuff about Derby will be the live updating or like the interaction, right? So screenshots don't really do it justice, and a lot of this stuff we can't just like put online to let people play because then we have to deploy it all special. And so yeah, anyway, that's what I got. Any announcements from anyone else?
Yeah, so this, as I told while we were not recording, I figured out a way to make the Derby stylus working without downsides. The downside was that there was a bug with when you plug in load styles a couple of times into the same application, it loaded the same components a couple of times. Well, styles for the same components a couple of times. So I'm going to write some kind of like a manual require implementation when I'm plugging in components styles, and this is going to resolve this issue. Yeah, I'm talking particularly about our Derby stylus work, which I think I have already linked sometime before.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a pull request on it into main Derby stylus a while ago, about 4 months ago or so. But there was this unfortunate bug which prevented Nate from merging it into the master. So hopefully, after I fix it, I'm going to do it like this weekend. We can merge it, and it's gonna be cool and shiny, and everything is gonna be happy. Okay,
Nice.
so another thing is that for one of our projects, well, actually for a couple of our projects, we are kind of working with the big data, and we need to. There are lots of things when we want to.
Sorry, I think my internet.
Internet is fine. Ian, you here? Yeah, are you here?
Yeah,
What did you say about internet?
You said something about your internet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. I was hearing you flake out a little bit on the last sentence you said. So I just plugged in.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that we're working with big data, and we need to display lots of stuff in tables. So I wrote a separate component which will allow which is able to plug into any kind of table and make it scrollable like in an Excel. So like we spent lots of time with Eugen trying to make it work like the whole day, but there is actually none of the implementations of it in the internet which kind of just work, which don't modify the DOM structure and just do it with some simple simply. Like most of them, they do the cloning, they clone the whole cells of the table, and this obviously just doesn't work with Derby. If you try to, if some script tries to mess with the DOM, Derby is going to just stop working, and that's it. So we had to come up with our own solution, which is to use the transform translate to move the t-head vertically and the cells horizontally. So this is the project is on our GitHub on dmapper.
Ты уже ее закончил? Она работает, да?
Yep. Yes, I finished it. It's working. It's called descrollable table. On decision mapper GitHub, here is, wait a second. Yeah, here's link.
Nice.
Yeah, so the only thing is that in order to for t-head to be on top of the columns, the t-head should go on the very bottom of the table. But most of the browsers, all browsers, they render t-head on the top anyways. So even if you place t-head after all others t-bodies, it is going to be fine. It is going to render fine, while also allowing us to make it on top of everything else.
Sweet.
So yeah, that's one thing, and then there is another kind of a helper that I did to make life easier for me, because I like to write components in Coffee and in Jade, and I can't publish it for everyone in Jade and in Coffee because there is like not everyone is using them. So like before that, I was writing in my post-publish and pre-publish. I was writing like the stuff to compile the Jade files into HTML and like the Coffee into JavaScript. So I just decided to make a simple Derby dev helpers project to simplify this. So you simply, like what it does for you, it allows you to compile Jade and Coffee before compilation. So you just place into your pre-publish hook in package.json, you place the, like you call the binary of this, the binary like Derby dev helper compile, Coffee and Jade, and that's it. And in the post-publish, you call the operation that is going to revert the compilation, so that you, after you publish something, it compiles it only when you publish, and after publishing, it reverts everything back, and you have your shiny project again without all of these compiled files.
Nice.
Yeah, and so like it is in this way you can write plugins without any like additional requirements of people using DerbyJS or CoffeeScript. That's it from our side, I think.
Nice.
Now more updates.
Yeah, anyone else have some updates?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, I did have a question. The standalone builder. Wait, was it the builder? Yeah, I still never was able to get the standalone builder to work with things generated by the Derby, like the generator Derby.
I think that Arthur tried to fix it, but it still didn't work after that, right?
Yeah. He said in the chat that he did, and then I ran it again, and I basically like it just puts something in an infinite loop. Like it's like trying to load something, and I don't know if I'm just like doing it really, like I'm missing something really simple or something. But yeah, still it never worked for me.
Okay, well, I'll try it again. Okay.
Do you think, yeah, or like maybe if you try it and it works, can you make like a couple of gists that like you know, show like the project and then the standalone project, and then I can like see if I, you know, forgot a line or something. I'm pretty sure I read the README and I put everything in there, but
yeah, there
like
may be some things that I may have missed out myself, so I'll just try it again. Last time I used it was when we were building our commercial project using it. It was a while ago, so maybe I missed some of the additional initialization steps.
Nice. I just see that you guys have a degrouped bar chart. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's Osman's project.
Nice.
Yeah, we use it in production pretty heavily.
Cool.
And actually, right now we're trying to refactor our charts in a way that it is going to use the D3's transition API and like the update API. So that, like currently what we do is Like, well, the downside is that we use lots of charts, but we re-render the whole component each time. So whenever the data changes, we just re-render the whole component, and it's not so efficient.
Right.
It's not true for all charts that are made, yeah, and it's possible just to update using built-in D3 patterns like update, enter, and append. The only thing is that there could be many elements on which are generated by D3, and that's why sometimes it's just simpler to update or rewrite the whole, not to recreate a whole component, but rewrite a whole canvas, for example. And that's all. Not to make it via transitions or something built in to D3 in a low level, but just to redraw. And I think it's not a critical thing. It's not like so critical to be so slow, because D3 itself pretty much fast, even for big data.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting, right? Like when you're rendering a chart client side and when the data is updating, you know, if it's something like a group bar chart, it probably is not going to have more than a couple hundred elements anyway, because any more than that, you can't fit the bars on the screen. So that's just not very much to deal with either way, right? Whether you let Derby re-render elements or you use D3 to selections to update the elements, or just redraw the whole thing. Transitions are really interesting. I think, like I mentioned before, I have a prototype in the works of a plugin, a racer plugin that would let you transition on model.sets. So you would basically say, like, create another path. I think I talked about it before. Anyway, that reminds me I need to finish that, so maybe I'll do that soon. But that might be an interesting, because one thing I noticed, like with the charts example that I made on Derby examples, is that there's one version where the chart transitions, and then there's one where it just updates instantly through Derby. And actually with real-time data, the transition is bad. Like with some charts, right, if it transitions but it's changing really quickly, then the transition just kind of like stutter, like, you know, every time it changes it tries to transition and it kind of gets slow, whereas you just want things to like kind of jump up and down and react in real time. Whereas in some cases, you know, in a lot of real-time stuff is like things refresh every second, so then it transitions over a second.
They don't
And
make
then,
sense.
huh?
I think the transitions don't make sense if you have real-time data that changes every second, and if transition is more than a second, then it doesn't make sense.
Right. Well, you can. So the point is, like, you can transition as long as or shorter than whatever the time is between your data updating. But with Derby, a lot of times data can update constantly or instantly, right? So
Yeah,
this is interesting to me, coming from doing a lot of D3 stuff, where a lot of transitions are really useful when you're changing like the UI somehow, or you're changing the view of something. It's not so much about changing the data necessarily, although a lot of times the data does change. It's just interesting to have to think about that, or that transitions they can get in the way if you're not careful about how you use them. Oh, and by the way, you asked in the chat if tributary was written in Derby. It's actually not. I wrote it before I joined Lever and before I knew about Derby. And one of my dreams is to rewrite it in Derby. And I think what I did yesterday is like a big part towards doing that, because I now have the essential functionality of like recreating components, or even just like having the live coding built out of Derby components. And so yeah, at some point I'll probably rebuild it. I mean, to do a real-time code pen is actually pretty straightforward with this, right? Like, so yeah.
And the way you're doing it now is like a timeout or something.
Is what?
Uh, how do you update? Um, how do you react on updates when you type something in tributary? How
Oh, I'm
does it
using.
work?
Is this CodeMirror has an API for when things change, and so whenever CodeMirror fires an event saying that it's changed, I take the updated code, and I'm actually using Backbone, and so like I use Backbone's model events, which are very similar to Derby's model events, right? Eraser. Um, and it just like in updates like that, it's just not shared. It's like only the client knows about any of that, right? So once you can click save, and I'll use Ajax to post up whatever you have to a gist. Just yeah. So if we built it in Derby though, I could be coding and then you could be watching, or you could then jump in and write some code too. And
And it's going to break because we don't have the rich text.
Well, with CodeMirror, the way I set up with the CodeMirror thing is that it's actually not like CodeMirror doesn't do any rich text. It's literally the approach of take the text and then like present it nicely. And they do have a concept of these widgets and other UI things that you can like insert into the editor or do other things. But it wouldn't actually break while you're typing because it's only treating things as text. I mean, you could obviously have, like, if both people are typing and you end up colliding and creating wrong code, then it wouldn't render. But that's the interesting thing about the way I set it up already, is that the whole idea is that as you're typing, is reevaluating everything as you type, and most of your character, like most of the things you type, are going to be broken until you get it right, right? Like you start typing a variable name, and all the letters up until you type out the whole variable name are undeclared. So the way I do it is that any update that doesn't, like, there's a try catch that tries to execute it. If it doesn't execute, it doesn't redo the whole thing. And so computationally, that's kind of seems expensive, right? It's like wasteful. It's like, hey, we do everything twice, and every time you type, we could like throw away everything and re-render it. But it just doesn't matter. Like the size of the code that we're talking is so small, and computers are so fast that like it's perfectly fine. So I'm really looking forward to playing with this, like having two people be able to code at the same time and see what they do, see what it's like.
But do you run it in an iframe on the server, or do you run it on the client?
So the way the tributary works is there is an iframe that like runs off a sandbox URL, but everything in tributary lives in the iframe except for like the authentication code that saves and that like interacts with the saving. So that way, if you loaded some code that was malicious and tried to like hijack your session, it can't get to the stuff where that's authenticated. Like the session is in the outer frame. The thing with Derby, or the thing that could be trickier is, or what I might do is that the code editor and all the code lives in your authenticated session as a regular Derby app, and then the iframe that's sandboxed, you would send it, you would post message to it the updated code whenever whenever it's good, and then, or you just like always send it, and then it would like render within the iframe, and it could it maybe be able to post message back like whether it was successful or not. Although I'm a little bit nervous about it because I used post message for tributary at some point, and when I tried to send it big blobs of code, like it would get pretty slow. Like it wasn't that efficient. It seemed like.
You know what I was thinking about recently? I was also thinking about some way of making an iframe, and well, for something similar. And there is actually a way to make an iframe manually and to display the content on the client side through the blob. If you make a blob of the HTML, you can actually display the iframe fully client side. So you can grab the input of user on client, and you can make a blob on client, and you can show it on client. So everything can be done without accessing the server at all. Like there is, for example, this code pen where there is an example how to make a blob for the iframe. I posted it to chat, so you can take a look. It may also be a solution how to make things faster without any server even.
Yeah, that sounds really great because it was really annoying development setup. I did like sandbox.localhost, and like I had to edit my etc hosts and like run a second node app that would just serve up the necessary pieces.
Yep.
And this sounds like this would be way better because, well, you don't need another server.
Yeah, because I was actually thinking about doing something similar to CodePen, and I researched how to do it efficiently. And this looks like a pretty good way to do it without any server at all. Like you can just generate everything client side. That's it.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. Take a look and try whether you can make it work for tributary. It's gonna be great, and you'll just make it like it can be even like only the client side, let's say, without any server at all.
That would be great because, yeah, you could just. Oh man. Yeah, I started prototyping out a component, or like I wanted like a set of components that, yeah, one would like create the iframe and open up a communication channel, and then inside the iframe there would be like a sort of bootstrapping set of code that would be able to then like talk back, like know how to talk back to the outer frame, right? And then whatever other code you wanted could live inside there, but it would just be safe. The only thing is, will that iframe, like the whole subdomain thing, we'll have to test out if the thing that you put in there has access to the parent, right?
To the parent window.
The parent window.
Well, basically, you can just pipe messages through, like, I don't know. I was thinking about just making the new iframe each time.
Right. I think the point is that what I'm concerned about is that the iframe, the stuff inside the iframe should not be able to get out.
Oh yeah, it can.
Okay. Oh, because I guess its URL it's not the same domain, right? Since its source is a blob instead of like.
Yeah, it shouldn't be able to get out. Yeah. Well, you'll have to research it.
Yeah, I'll try it out, see what happens. But yeah, that's a cool tip. This might be way more. It will be way more convenient if it works.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, nice. Haven't seen too many like mailing list posts or other unanswered questions. I see like, Arthur answered about authentication in both places, or there was a question about authentication and access control, and sent Derby login, share access. Really need to get to making this tutorial or like the guide around that, like all the different strategies, and also explain how we do it at Lever. Speaking of which, I am switching back to working on the website right now, so hopefully I'll be pushing something out this week soon. And
That's great.
yeah, I removed Bootstrap from the site.
Removed it from where?
From
From the
Derby.
site?
Or I haven't, it's in my branch, but I'm restyling it without Bootstrap because we weren't actually using that much Bootstrap stuff. And one of our designers helped like kind of redesign the documentation layout. And what they wanted, it was like, I just needed to like switch a little bit of HTML and the CSS. And once I got it laid out without Bootstrap, I was like, well, it only seems like a little bit more work to just restyle like the links and stuff. And I think personally, I like it, like the less stuff going on, that the less I'm confused about what's causing what. So I feel like having more control gives me more control over what I'm doing with the styles. So I'll make a pull request for that people can review, and then I'll probably just push it out. But hopefully we should be looking at that next week's office hours.
Great. Okay.
Also,
so do you have actually a design somewhere so we can look at it? How is it going to look like?
The design, yes. Yeah, I can probably just.
You can just share the screen.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can do that. Let's do that. Yeah, I have it open here. Share the screen. Can you see that?
Yep. Okay.
So it's just like some fonts, the navigation.
Yep, it's more flat. Okay, cool.
Yeah, a little flatter. Like this stuff is kind of the same. Yeah, these were different iterations. But yeah, I'm working on. Yeah. And then the main thing that was different was that like this scrolls independently from the main content. And so, and then this bar kind of stays the same. Yeah. So
How did you do it to scroll independently? Did you do it on Flexboxes or the old way?
So I'm using something I took from like Framer.js's website. It's just like two divs inside another div, and
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, by the way, do you use Flexboxes in Lever?
We have not started using Flexbox.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Are you guys using it? I thought it was
Yeah,
it
it's
was
really
slow until now or something.
Yeah, we're using it for a year now,
Oh,
or
really?
even year and a half. It's just awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
You should try it, and especially it's interesting that you didn't use it before, since you are only targeting Chrome users, right? You only make clever work for Chrome, so you have a perfect support for the Flexboxes throughout your user base. So you should
Well,
just start using it.
yeah. All right, I'll look into it. I know, I
Yeah,
mean, when
like
I heard about it, I was like, this is a godsend. Can't wait.
Yeah.
And people scared me about it being like slow or something. Uh, but it works pretty well.
yeah, it works great. You just need to use the after prefixer. So just plug in our Derby stylus and that's it. Well, we're going to merge it into main Derby stylus hopefully by the next office hours, so it's gonna be good. So after prefixer basically deals with all of those stuff by itself, and especially it's good for the flex boxes. You just write with with the default, with the streamlined syntax, and it does everything automatically for like those old Androids and for like the WebKit and for the old Mozilla versions where the Flexbox was the where there was the old implementation. So the problem is that there are like 3 different implementations of Flexboxes, which were at like 2011, 2013, 2014, something like this. But after prefixer deals with all of those inconsistencies.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just taking a couple notes.
It's not related to Derby though, but you should try it. It's really awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean it's general web development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, talking about different stuff. Yeah, not
We actually
Derby only.
we started targeting, or like we're trying to support Firefox and like newer versions of IE now though, as we get more customers in Safari. So I mean Derby, you know, Will did some work to make sure that Derby is actually, you know, it's functionally compatible with all those browsers. So now it's a matter of just making sure, yeah, and with stylus and using all, you know, all the vendor prefixes, it's pretty much well supported across the board. But yeah.
Yeah, well, right now the only problem is if you try to support Explorer 9.
Right.
Everything bigger than Explorer 9 is like it's pretty much the whole CSS3 is supported by Explorer 10 and up. And another problem may be Android 2.3, like the old mobile devices, but I don't think that there are any people who are still using the 2.3 or like anything older than the 4th version.
Mm-hmm.
And the iOS devices, like people usually update really fast on iOS. Like everyone is now on iOS 7 at least, and it also supports all the new features. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Well, if you just do if you just prefix everything is like pretty much the whole CSS3 is supported. Yeah. And actually, we were using Derby with Firefox before, and it was working pretty good. It's just with the Explorer there were issues, and Safari had issues, but like Chrome and Firefox were fine.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, we saw that Nate did like a couple of fixes, and then you also fixed like the issues with the Explorer, like the numeric inputs, right? Something was wrong there. So
Yeah.
now it should work in Explorer fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is cool. Like we're considering that you made all of those changes, we're now going to tell our clients that like also most of the browsers are supported. So that's cool.
All right. Go open source, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, all this talking makes me want to go finish the Derby site work. I don't know if you guys have more things to discuss, or if we should just call it and get back to hacking. What do you think?
I've got a short question about LiveDB Mongo driver.
Sure.
Is it going to be updated with MongoDB 3.0 release?
I'm not sure. We are still in the process of migrating to 2.6 or 2.8 if we can.
Yeah, 2.6, I guess.
I think we've been stuck on 2.4 for a while. I think we got it so we can get to 2.6, and that we had a bunch of, like, we had some data that was invalid in 2.6, like you couldn't have like dots in the keys or some other weird stuff that for some reason you could before. I think we cleaned it up, and we haven't quite migrated all of our stuff. We have some stuff in 2.6, some stuff going there. So I know Lever probably won't be going to 3.0 very soon. Are there major, like, is there API changes that need to happen for the driver?
I can't actually tell. But from the release notes of this MongoDB, it's much more. It has more performance updates, and it's better in terms of performance.
I know we've been talking about removing MongoSkin from everything that we do at Lever and just using the native Mongo driver. I'm not sure, can't even remember real quick if LiveDB Mongo uses.
Well, actually, use Mongo skin only to connect to the cluster of Mongo. That's it, I think.
Right. And even that, we've had sort of bad experiences. So yeah, it looks like LiveDB Mongo still uses MongoSkin. So yeah, we're still working on that part.
Another good thing about the Mongo 3.0 is that it supports the SSL out of the box, while like only like the 2.6 and 2.8 they support it only in Mongo Enterprise, which is not free, I think.
Right.
So 3.0 like is a way to go.
Nice. I think we're actually paying for Enterprise or support. Yeah.
What do they give you for this?
Mainly,
for Enterprise, actually.
Ask them questions and they answer them very quickly. But they'll also, like, they audited our indices too. So like, if we had slow query, they took a look at all the indexes we had. They came and did a session with us, explained how, in more detail, how indexes work and what makes them more or less effective. And it's really just the support. We've also, getting our backup situation really solid was, I guess, a good bit of work and involved a lot of back and forth with their support, because we have, like, a big cluster that has one primary and several secondaries, and we're using MMS to back it up, like an on-premises MMS to back it up, I think. And yeah, there's different way. Like backing up Mongo live is not straightforward, as far as I can tell.
So in
Well,
enterprise package, they give you just support and some stuff in like helping with work with database, not some unusual stuff as like some new things to work with database just to support and how to say.
Yeah, it's really just like we can send them like these are exactly like these are the configurations for like our servers, and this is how much like this is the stats of like when we output these commands, and they'll be like, oh, you should be doing this, not that, or like they will take a look at our very specific use cases and then give us advice or answer questions about why this is working or this isn't working. So I think it's really just about the personalization, like how specific they will get, um, and they respond very quickly as well.
and where did you end up with indices in the Mongo?
I mean, we use them. We learned about like if you have a Mongo index, let's say like we generally index everything by account ID. So like we have most of our like all our customers are in an account of one form, and so almost every query has an account ID. And if you like have an index on account ID and then you have another one that's like account ID and user ID, like you don't actually need the first account ID index because any query that just goes after the account ID in that collection will just like use the first part of an index. So like, you don't need to like make a pyramid of indices where you keep adding fields as long as like you query from left, like the index, it reads from the indices left to right as well. I guess that's, does that make sense? Like, so, and the reason that's important is that if you make more indices than you need, it's going to slow down writes, right, and take up more memory. They also, there's also limitations to indices, like you can't, which this says in the docs, but they took a look at ours to kind of help find ones that we had mistakenly made, reorganize them, but you can't index on 2 array fields at the same time. Like you can only do 1 array field in your index. What else? I think it was mainly the ordering thing that one session uncovered. We were just able to clean up and remove a bunch of useless indices.
Do you have some kind of statistics that you gather on the usage of your Mongo cluster? Was it better after you did the cleanup with indices or not?
Yeah, I don't know how much better. I mean, we've definitely like so we have we have like the Mongo MMS, which is like the dashboard that shows you like ops and stuck query, and then you can turn on the profiling, right? And we have that. And we've actually like we've had problems where we have missing indices, or one time we mysteriously like some indices disappeared, and that just like destroys Mongo on big, like if they're really big collections, right? So like I don't know what the stats are. Yeah, I don't know the stats on how much better it is once you have like correct indices. I do know that you can tell if you don't have indices, like, or if you don't have the right ones, and that you can just monitor your slow queries. And I think that's what's really important. But yeah, it's mostly just like how can we get the most coverage with the least indices. General philosophy.
Okay. I think another problem right now in LiveDB is that when you try to do some complicated queries, like the aggregation queries, Like the regular way that queries work in LiveDB right now is that they query themselves each 3 seconds. So they actually do the query each 3 seconds, and they send the response back to the client. But I think that it only works for simple queries, and for those like aggregation, it doesn't do this. It does it like the same time that you try to get the response from the server. It tries to connect to Mongo and do this query. So, well, at least that's what I think Arthur told me about it. So we were thinking about ways to improve it somehow, to maybe make it work as a simple queries, to also update the query each 3 seconds.
So you're talking about like when you subscribe and then it polls, right? Like the polling is the every however many seconds that it does things. So you want aggregations to also poll, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it can. That's possible. The thing is that you have to be pretty careful, just because aggregations can be that much more expensive, right? So
yeah,
you want to
that's
make
right.
sure that if you're polling on an aggregation query, yeah, I think right now you can't subscribe. And Nate mentioned there was also part of that is because like when you do an aggregation, it has to subscribe to the whole collection. So like any update in that collection will then cause it to update and rerun, I guess. I suggested that we could support it if you look at the match. So Mongo aggregations can have a match query in the first part. And so if it sees that, and that's basically like a regular filter, right? Like a regular query. So if Mongo or if LiveDB like pulls that out, if you do that first, then it could use that to limit its subscription. Otherwise, it would just subscribe to the whole query if you do it. And it's potentially going to be expensive, but if you know what you're doing, maybe it's fine. Because I mean, it would be really badass to like real time, like having those be real time.
Yeah, of course.
But I can yeah, I mean, I can tell you though, like for our app, our reporting stuff there's some pretty serious aggregations in there on like for our bigger accounts, and it can take multiple seconds to complete though. So like you wouldn't want that to be subscribed to, even if it would be cool. Just because Mongo's not really fast enough at that scale.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's right. It's you need to decide, like everyone need to decide whether it makes sense or not based on the scale of the project. If you do something too big, it doesn't make sense to update it even like each 10 seconds. It may be like only like 1 minute or like something like this. In our case, we just have like we just have like one professor, and there are lots of students. So in our case, we have only one user at a time, one out of like let's say one on each 100 users who is going to have this aggregation updates. Everyone else don't need it and they won't have access to it. So maybe in our case we can allow ourselves to do this reactively, but I don't know. Yeah, there is things to think about. Okay.
Is it possible I haven't even looked at if you can like configure how often the polling happens, right? Like every 3 seconds, every minute, like is that an option?
But I think that just the subscription is not working at all for aggregation type of queries.
Right.
Only fetch is working. So even if you try to do subscribe, it's going to only fetch stuff. Or even throw the error, I don't know actually.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the reason that yeah, it wasn't turned on is just because it's expected to be non-performant, but I don't think that's like necessarily a good way to design right? Like you can have a feature that's dangerous to use and just it's up to people to use it smartly, right?
Yeah. Well, in our case,
And
we just worked around this by having some other kind of a marker that that only after this marker occurs, only then we do the aggregation query. So, like for example, like when new student joins the game, then we like do the aggregation query again. And like this kind of stuff. So we had to do it like manually. We had to find some events that we need to react on to do these aggregations, and like that's actually how we're doing it right now. But yeah, maybe if there would be some kind of an option to not do it like each 3 seconds, but like you proposed, to have a way to control this when you actually do the query. Like one of the options can be like how often do you want to update the subscription, like each 30 seconds or like each 1 minute. In this case, it may be better. It may make sense to automatically update it.
yeah.
Well, we'll need to raise this question again once the Nate is back.
Yeah.
Probably.
That'd be a good one.
Discuss it again. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this was helpful. Thanks, Ian.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. So I guess we'll see you guys next week, and see you on Gitter in between then.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.